Good evening. Before you drift to sleep, let me tell you a story. A story of love, courage, and hope, born in the darkest of times. So take a deep breath, close your eyes, and let this story carry you into peaceful dreams. This is Letters Across the War, a true story of two hearts who refused to give up on each other, even when the world around them fell apart. In a time when the world was breaking, love found a way to hold on. This is the story of Eleanor and Thomas, two souls who met by chance and stayed together through ink, faith, and distance, across the fires of World War II. Their story isn't written in fairy tales. It's written in letters, carried across oceans and battlefields, each one a heartbeat from another world. It was the summer of 1940 in London. The air smelled of dust, smoke, and fear. Yet the people still found ways to dance. At the town hall, soldiers and nurses gathered for one last night of laughter before the chaos of war returned. That's where Eleanor Whitmore, a 22-year-old nurse, met Thomas Hale, a young Royal Air Force pilot. She remembered his smile, awkward, shy, but kind. He remembered her eyes, blue like the morning sky after rain. They danced, once, twice. And then, as the night deepened, Thomas whispered, "If I come back, will you dance with me again?" Eleanor smiled softly. "You better come back, Thomas Hale. I don't like being stood up." That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The promise in their eyes was enough. A week later, Thomas was sent to France. Eleanor returned to her hospital, tending to wounded soldiers, some younger than her. Every few days, a letter arrived. Old paper, blue ink, the smell of dust and flight. "My dearest Eleanor," Thomas wrote, "the nights here are cold, but your words keep me warm. When I fly, I imagine your hand in mine, and I remind myself that love gives courage." She wrote back every week, sometimes with tears staining the page. "My Thomas, I keep your letters under my pillow. London feels empty without you. Promise me the sky will bring you home." The letters grew into their lifeline. When the city shook under air raids, she read them by candlelight. When he looked down from the clouds, he swore he could see her light shining back. Months passed, and so did the seasons. Eleanor learned to listen for the mailman's footsteps, the way others listened for sirens. Each envelope was a heartbeat, each word a promise that hope still lived somewhere beyond the smoke. Sometimes his letters came with smudges of oil or dirt. Sometimes they were hurried, scratched in pencil between missions, but they always carried warmth. "My love," he once wrote, "if the sky could speak, it would tell you how I whisper your name above the clouds. When the engines roar, I close my eyes for just a moment and think of your laughter. That's what keeps me steady." Eleanor would fold the letter carefully and hold it to her chest. Sometimes she'd read it aloud to her friend Clara, a nurse with quick hands and a brave heart. Clara would smile and say, "Keep writing him, Ellie. Love is the only medicine they can't ration." On nights when the bombs fell too close, Eleanor hid under her hospital stone archway, clutching Thomas's photo. In the flicker of distant fire, she whispered prayers not just for him, but for every soldier, every nurse, every mother waiting for her child to come home. Then came 1941. The Battle of Britain raged on. Thomas flew almost every day, his squadron losing men faster than they could remember their names. Each mission, he tucked Eleanor's picture inside his jacket. He said it reminded him that love was still real, even above the clouds, even through the roar of war. One morning his plane was hit. He crash-landed behind enemy lines in France, wounded but alive. For weeks there were no letters. Eleanor waited by the post window every dawn, her heart aching with silence. Then, months later, a telegram arrived. Pilot Officer Thomas Hale, missing, presumed dead. Her world shattered, but she refused to believe it. Every night she wrote a new letter, even if no one would read it. "My dearest," she wrote once, "if you are gone, let this world know that I loved you with every breath. But if you still live, even for one more sunrise, find your way home to me." And though she didn't know it, Thomas was not dead. He had been rescued by a French family, hiding in their farmhouse near Normandy. He could not write, could not send word. He only had her letters, the last few she'd sent before his disappearance. Every word was his reason to live. He read them under candlelight, whispering her name like a prayer. He worked on the farm during the days, helping to fix fences, chop wood, and carry water from the well. The children called him Monsieur Avion, Mr. Airplane, because of his old flight badge. At night, he would gaze out toward the distant English Channel, the horizon faint under the moonlight. And he would imagine her, still waiting, still writing, still believing he was out there somewhere, beneath the same stars. After nearly a year, Thomas joined the French resistance. He helped Allied pilots escape through hidden routes and secret trains. Each mission he took on carried the same hope, that every man he helped return home was a step closer to finding his way back to Eleanor. Meanwhile, in London, Eleanor carried on. She worked through sleepless nights, bandaging wounds and comforting the dying. Yet every now and then, she would slip into the hospital garden, where the roses still bloomed stubbornly through the soot. There, she'd whisper softly to the sky, "I know you're still out there, Thomas. I can feel it when the wind moves." Then came 1943, 3 long years since she'd last seen his face. Thomas finally made it back to England. He limped to the address on every envelope he had memorized. 12 Brookside Lane, London. Eleanor was tending to patients when she saw him. Thin, scarred, wearing the same uniform she thought was buried forever. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. He smiled, that same shy smile from the dance. "I told you I'd come back for that dance." She dropped everything, tears streaming down her face, and ran to him. The hospital fell silent, nurses watching as the two embraced. No music played that day, but they swayed, holding each other, as if afraid to ever let go again. That night, they sat by a small fire in her flat. Neither spoke much. The silence between them said more than words ever could. He showed her the faded letters, creased and worn from the years he'd kept them close. And she held his trembling hands, whispering, "You found your way home." The war dragged on for 2 more years. But now, they faced it together. He flying missions close to home, she tending to the wounded, each finding peace in the simple knowledge that they had found one another again. One evening, as sirens echoed through the city once more, Thomas and Eleanor stood on the hospital roof, watching the searchlights sweep the night. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders. For a moment, they were silent. Then she whispered, "Do you ever think we'll be free of it?" He nodded gently. "One day, love. And when that day comes, we'll plant roses instead of running from fire." And in that fragile moment, under the dim light of a wounded city, they kissed for the first time. When morning came, the world outside was gray with ash and mist. But inside Eleanor's heart, there was finally light again. Thomas returned to the skies, but this time his letters were filled with gentleness, with gratitude for every sunrise he was given. He wrote, "My dearest Eleanor, each dawn feels softer now that I know you're waiting. The clouds no longer frighten me. They only remind me of the veil between us, thin enough for love to pass through." And she would reply, "My Thomas, your words reach me like small miracles. When I hold them, it feels as though the world quiets for a while, and I can breathe again." Together, they learned how to live beside war, not denying it, but refusing to let it steal their tenderness. They often met between shifts, sharing tea in dim cafes, their hands brushing on chipped porcelain cups. Sometimes they didn't speak at all. It was enough to simply exist together after so long apart. In the winter of 1944, London froze under heavy snow. Thomas would visit Eleanor at the hospital gates, carrying her a small paper parcel with a single cinnamon bun inside. He'd wait until her shift ended, then walk her home through the quiet streets, their footprints side by side on the white pavement. Once, as they crossed Westminster Bridge, Thomas stopped to watch the moon rippling in the dark water below. He turned to her and whispered, "Even after everything we've lost, the world still manages to look beautiful, doesn't it?" Eleanor nodded softly. "It does, Thomas. Maybe beauty isn't gone, just waiting to be noticed again." In those final months of the war, they clung to hope like a secret melody only they could hear. The city trembled with anticipation. Every whisper of news, every broadcast hinted that peace might finally come. And then, one quiet morning in May of 1945, the church bells rang. The war in Europe was over. Eleanor stood in the hospital courtyard as confetti of torn paper fell from the windows. She saw people laughing, crying, soldiers kissing strangers in the streets. Thomas arrived moments later, his uniform wrinkled, his eyes shining. He lifted her into his arms, spinning her around as laughter filled the air. "We made it, love," he whispered. "We made it." That autumn, they married in a small chapel surrounded by broken walls and wildflowers. The pews were half empty, but their hearts were full. Eleanor wore a dress sewn from scraps of her mother's old gown. Thomas's best man was a pilot who had flown beside him in France. Clara, her dear friend, stood as maid of honor. When the priest asked for the rings, Thomas smiled shyly. He had carved them himself from bits of an old airplane propeller. When the vows were spoken, Eleanor's voice trembled but did not break. "I waited for you through fire and silence," she said, "and I'll wait again through all the small wars life brings." They kissed beneath the fragile sunlight of a world just learning to be gentle again. Their first home was modest, a narrow flat with cracked windows and a garden too small for anything but daisies. But to them it was a palace. Each morning, Thomas brewed tea and placed a letter on her breakfast tray. Just a line or two, written before she woke. Some days it said, Your smile is my favorite sunrise. Other days, I still dream of that first dance. They learned to live slowly. Thomas took a job teaching young pilots, while Eleanor returned to nursing, helping rebuild the hospital that had saved so many lives. At night, they sat on the porch together, listening to the radio hum with soft jazz. Sometimes during storms, Eleanor would light a candle and pull out their old letters. She'd trace her fingers over the faded ink, remembering how each word had once crossed oceans. Thomas would watch her quietly, his eyes gentle and full. "Do you ever get tired of reading them?" he'd ask. "Never," she'd whisper. "They remind me that even when the world tried to fall apart, we found a way to stay whole." The years moved softly forward, the garden filled with flowers again. By 1948, they had a son, Peter, a quiet child with Thomas's eyes and Eleanor's gentle smile. They told him stories of bravery and kindness, but never of glory. Thomas would say, "War teaches us what truly matters, not medals or flags, but the people who wait for us to come home." Every Christmas, Eleanor and Thomas returned to the town hall where they first met. The floors were scuffed, the lights dimmer now, but whenever the old gramophone played the waltz from that summer night, Thomas would take her hand and whisper, "May I have this dance?" And together they would glide across the floor, slowly, gently, as if time itself had paused to watch. As the decades unfolded, the world changed around them. New buildings rose. The sound of jet planes replaced the hum of propellers. But inside their little home, love remained simple. They wrote to each other even when they lived under the same roof. Small notes tucked into coat pockets, between book pages, or slipped under teacups. Each one ended the same way, "Forever yours." In 1960, Thomas built a small wooden box, mahogany, polished smooth, with a blue ribbon tied around it. Inside, they placed every letter they had ever written, from the first note before his deployment to the ones they exchanged after their wedding. Eleanor added a final note on top, in her familiar looping handwriting. "For whoever finds this someday." These words carried us through the storm. Time continued its quiet march. Peter grew, married, and had children of his own. Eleanor and Thomas moved to the countryside, to a cottage that overlooked a meadow of wildflowers. The air there was soft and full of birdsong. Thomas spent his mornings in the garden, while Eleanor wrote letters to old friends, her words still delicate and kind. Sometimes, in the evenings, they sat on the porch, wrapped in a single blanket, watching the sunset fade into gold. Thomas would take her hand and whisper, "Do you ever think about those days?" She'd smile. "Every day, Thomas, but not with pain, just gratitude. For what we survived, and for what we built from the ashes." Years later, when Eleanor fell ill, Thomas never left her side. He read their old letters aloud, his voice trembling but full of love. "My darling Eleanor," he'd say softly, "do you remember that promise we made, that if I came back, we'd dance again?" She nodded faintly. "And we did, Thomas, every day, in every small way." On her last night, as the rain tapped gently on the window, Eleanor whispered, "If love can travel through war, then surely it can travel through time." Thomas kissed her forehead. It will, my love. It always has. When she was gone, he placed a single rose on her pillow, and beside it, the box of their letters, tied again with the same blue ribbon. Years passed. Thomas grew older, his hair silver, his hands lined with time. But every evening he still sat by the window with a cup of tea and whispered her name to the wind. On the anniversary of their first dance, he wrote one final letter. My dearest Eleanor, if somehow these words reach you, know that I have lived a life full of quiet joy because of you. You were my courage, my calm, my home. Wait for me, where the air is still and the stars are bright. We'll dance again. He folded the letter, placed it inside the wooden box, and tied the ribbon once more. When Thomas passed away, the box was found beside him, the ink of that last letter still fresh. Decades later, their grandson found it in the attic. The paper had yellowed, the ribbon had faded, but the love within it felt untouched by time. He read their words aloud, and for a moment the house seemed to breathe again, as though Eleanor and Thomas were still there, dancing softly in the light of memory. One of Thomas's final letters said, "If someday someone finds these words, let them know, even in war, love survives." And it did. Through fire and silence, through ink and memory, through every heart that ever hoped for peace. Letters Across the War, a true story of love that refused to surrender. Now, close your eyes. Let the echoes of their love guide you into rest. And may your dreams tonight be peaceful.